So as you heard, I grew up in Boston in a section called Southie, one of the most racially polarized parts of the city. When I was little, my mother would go shopping downtown at the area now known as Downtown Crossing. And my reward for enduring what seemed like hours of boring nothing would be to go to a place called Bailey's on Tremont Street for an ice cream sundae, okay? They were so well known. The ice cream was put in those silver dishes and the homemade hot fudge got poured on and it would drip down the side and you could scoop it off the plate with a spoon and it was just the best. So we get to Bailey's one day and the counter is full and there's a line. So I'm waiting in line with my mother and I look over and there's another line with an African-American mother and a little girl. And just as it was custom in that day, we were dressed up. I had on a nice dress and patent leather shoes and gloves. And look over at the girl and she had a pink ruffled dress on with white dots and a white sash, patent leather shoes and gloves. She was about my age. I was probably 6 or 7. And we got seated, and the line was gone, and there were seats at the counter, and they were still waiting in line. We had ordered our sundaes. I said to my mother, "Why aren't they sitting down?" And so she started to answer, and I was little, and I didn't understand any of it. And I said, "I don't understand. Why aren't they sitting down?" She said, "You know, there's a separate place for them to sit. They're not allowed to sit with us." And I said, "But why?" And she put her spoon down and she said, "You know, there isn't a good reason." And she whispered in my ear, "Someday, God willing, you'll sit next to her." Now, a few weeks later, we were on a bus going back shopping in Downtown Crossing. And we were sitting up front, and an African-American woman got on the bus and walked to the back. My mother turned to me and she said, "No matter what anybody says or what you hear, I do not want you to move from this seat." And she walked to the back of the bus and she sat down next to the African-American woman. And as people got on the bus, there were sounds made and things said, and I looked back and there was my mother sitting with her big coat on, clutching a giant handbag next to the African-American woman, also wearing a big coat, clutching a giant handbag. And they just looked straight ahead, holding their bags, gloves on their hands, not saying a word. We got off at the very last stop with that woman, and the woman turned to my mother and said, "Why did you sit with me?" And the woman said, "Well, a few weeks ago, my daughter asked me a question and I couldn't give her a good answer. I'm a Christian and I believe in the teachings of Jesus. And when people went into the temple to gamble or when the poor were persecuted, he had no tolerance for that. I thought today I could show my daughter a better answer."